everyone. Welcome back to the Laundry List. My name is Todd. We are here in beautiful Scottsdale, Arizona. It's 114 degrees, and we are loving life. There's actually a big party at the studio tonight. So all of our friends and family from the other podcast are going to come, and we're going to break bread and talk about all of our issues and all of the content that we talk about on these podcasts. Today, we're going to do something a little different. We had some of our listeners call and also email us some questions that they have that they want answered. So I don't know if anyone's seen Fraiser Craine, but it's my favorite sitcom ever done with Kelsey Grammer. And it's a similar concept to that. So people are going to come in with a question. We're going to talk about the question, answer it. If they need additional help, we'll get them a therapist, a professional counselor to talk to. And hopefully we can help some people out there and with our experience, strength, and peace. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Blake, who is going to read the laundry list, which are the traits that we grew up with in a household with some dysfunction and some yelling typically. And we use these traits to survive in a very traumatic childhood. So these worked for a long time, and we tend to still use them as adults, but they don't work anymore. But we don't realize they don't work until we have someone shine a light on them. And Blake, please read the laundry list for us.
All right. Thank you, Todd. This is the laundry list. 1, we became isolated and afraid of people and authority figures. 2, we became approval seekers and lost our identity in the process. 3, we are frightened by angry people and any personal criticism. 4, we either become alcoholics, marry them, or both, or find another compulsive personality such as a workaholic to fulfill our sick abandonment needs. 5, we live life from the viewpoint of victims, and we are attracted by that weakness in our love, friendship, relationships. 6, we have an overdeveloped sense of responsibility, and it is easier for us to be concerned with others rather than ourselves. This enables us not to look too closely at our own faults, etc. 7, we get guilty feelings when we stand up for ourselves instead of giving in to others. 8, we became addicted to excitement. 9, we confuse love and pity and tend to love people we can pity and rescue. 10, we have stuffed our feelings from our traumatic childhoods and have lost the ability to feel or express our feelings because it hurts so much. Denial. 11, we judge harshly. We judge ourselves harshly and have a very low sense of self-esteem. 12, we are dependent personalities who are terrified of abandonment and will do anything to hold on to a relationship in order not to experience painful abandonment feelings, which we receive from living with sick people who were never there emotionally for us. 13, alcoholism is a family disease, and we became para-alcoholic and took on the characteristics of that disease, even though we did not pick up the drink. 14, para-alcoholics are reactors rather than actors.
Very good. So those are the 14 traits of an adult child or people that have figured out how to survive in codependent relationships and with trauma. And I call it lying. Those are survival traits which we use lies and deceit to feel safe. But really, we need to love that inner child and really take care and protect that inner child at all costs. Charles, would you be so kind and to read the promises? And this is what you get if you listen to our podcast for 9 consecutive weeks. You get the promises.
This is what we can get. Number 1, we will discover our real identities by loving and accepting ourselves. 2, our self-esteem will increase as we give ourselves approval on a daily basis. 3, fear of authority figures and the need to people please will leave us. Thank God. 4, our ability to share intimacy will grow inside of us. 5, as we face our abandonment issues, we will be more attracted by strengths and become more tolerant of weakness. 6, we will enjoy feeling stable, peaceful, and financially secure. 7, we will learn how to play and have fun in our lives. We talk about that one a lot. 8, we will choose to love people who can love and be responsible for themselves. 9, healthy boundaries and limits will become easier for us to set. 10, fears of failure and success will leave us, and we intuitively make healthier choices. 11, with help from our ACA support group, we will slowly release our dysfunctional behaviors. And finally, 12, gradually, with our higher power's help, We will learn to expect the best and get it.
Expect the best and get it.
Thank you so much, Charles.
We really didn't even know what that meant, to expect the best and get it. But now we're starting to grasp what that means. Sarai, I got a question for you. Last week we had an episode with Dan from Capital Fit. He has a podcast called Capital Fit. I'm just getting to know Dan. He's just a tremendous man, a man of, a lot of knowledge, but also a lot of vulnerability and honesty about his feelings and his past. So I really appreciate that. And to have another adult male open up to someone that they don't know well, and it develops a quick relationship and an intimate relationship. So I always love that. So I encourage you to listen to that episode that's coming out today. And then we have the second version of the 7 Deadly Sins that was released 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago?
I believe it was 2 weeks ago.
Okay. I've not listened to that, but that must have been a long episode because we did a preamble to that, didn't we?
Yeah, I think it was a little over an hour.
Hour and a half?
Actually, let's look.
Yeah, because we did an episode that was leading into the 7 Deadly Sins, Part 2, reimagined. And again, if you've ever watched The Matrix, I would encourage everyone to watch The Matrix with that in mind. With that in mind, and knowing that it is just truly like a dream, and the ego at all costs wants to stop love, faith, and surrender, because the fear will take over. The fear of the agents, Mr. Anderson and all those agents, trying to stop, trying to stop our love and our true self from evolving and really taking over our human experience. So
it was an hour and 15 minutes.
Hour and 15 minutes.
Episode 40.
Episode 40. What was the title of that?
7 Deadly Sins 2.0.
7 Deadly Sins 2.0. I encourage you to listen to that, because I really, really love that podcast talking about the 7 Deadly Sins. So today, again, we're doing the Dr. Fraiser Craine show, and Roz is now Soraya. And let's hear from our first caller. And she actually sent us a voice recording, which is kind of cool because we get to hear her voice. And the second one just emailed us.
She also sent a voice recording.
They both did. All right, so we have 2 voice recordings. So Soraya, why don't you introduce these listeners, and we will talk about their concerns and their problems.
Sure. We're going to start with Sierra, and I'm going to go ahead and play her voice memo now.
My name is Sierra. I grew up with my dad, who was someone who would get mean when they're drunk, which has led me to be fearful of angry people. So my question would be, how did each of you overcome fear of criticism, and what should be my next steps?
Boy, that's a great question. Great question. We can pass it around the baton here at the table, but, what comes to my mind is that, my dad didn't drink really at all. And so I don't really relate to that piece of it, but I understand what angry adults in your life, especially a parental figure, can do to a young person, 5, 6, 4 years old, and how that creates such trauma and creates an opportunity to step into the laundry list to survive. And what does that mean? It means that we need to be a people pleaser. We need to know that it is our fault. It's our fault that our father or mother or parental figure is mad at us and getting angry at us and criticizing us. Because as a 4-year-old or 5-year-old, you believe it's your fault, period. There's no other way to rationalize why that person's so mad. As an adult, we can realize this has nothing to do with us. This is their own shit. Don't bring it on to me. And I release you with love. But that's an adult. But as a young child, you can't have that type of concept and logic in your mind at that age. So the first thing I would tell you is that remember how old you were when these traumatic events happened. And remember, give yourself a break. Like, you had no defense mechanism. What are you going to leave? You're going to leave the house at 5? Dad, you get drunk and scream and yell at me and make me feel like shit and call me all these names, so I'm out of here? No, where are you going to go? You're 5 years old. You got to take it and figure out how to survive, hence the laundry list. But you can now reframe that and say, Sierra, little girl, 5 years old, 6 years old, I'm going to put you on my lap. I'm going to talk to you. I'm going to make you feel safe. I'm going to put my arms around you and tell you it wasn't your fault. You are a beautiful, loving child that deserves to feel safe and secure. And that was a traumatic event that happened, but it's not your fault. It's not your fault. And I would do some journaling about it. I would talk to a therapist about it. I would talk to your adult self about it quite a bit and throw your arms around that little kid and love that little kid and let her know it's not her fault. She did nothing wrong. She is a beautiful child of God. And feel that love and peace from yourself and from your God, and release your father with love. Send him blessings, send him healing, send him positive, loving energy. And I think once you release that anger and resentment maybe towards your father and get yourself off the hook, release yourself. You don't need to carry this trauma and this, this burden onto yourself anymore. You've done it long enough. It's time to release him. It's time to release yourself and love yourself. So I'll let you guys chime in on Soraya's question and see what you guys think.
Sierra's question.
Or Sierra. Soraya's right here.
Well, in a little context, I think Soraya used to be called Sierra for the first 2 months. So
it was more like 6.
Now he's really confused.
I actually called Sierra. I have a friend named Sierra. I called her Soraya.
Yeah, we rewired your brain.
He also called me Acacia this morning, so.
Well, that's
Acacia's probably listening too.
Yeah. No, I think what, at least for me, my first kind of thing would be to realize that, like Todd said, it's not your fault, and just become aware of how you react to angry people. Because I think for the longest time, at least for me, I just was numb to the whole thing, because that was how I used the laundry list to cope with my angry, drunk mother. Was I just kind of ignored it and became numb to it and didn't feel anything, and all of that. So I think the first thing is just realizing what your body's doing when someone's yelling at you. I know for me, I get this pit in my stomach and I want it to stop, and then later in life became a people pleaser and all of that. So I think just being aware of it is kind of the first step in fixing it.
Yeah, I agree. That's not your fault. And becoming aware of it, hey, this happened. It happened for a reason, but it's my life and it's my experience, and it's up to me to fix it. My dad's not going to fix it. A therapist can't fix it. I have to fix it. So I think the awareness is obviously the first step. So great feedback. Charles, what do you got?
Well, that is a great question, Sierra, and I love this. Is a neat format right here. Very cool. I want to say special thanks to the producers for setting that up. So Sierra, I was terrified of my father as well. Terrified of him. He was an aggressive, violent man. I wound up working for him at one point when I was younger, and he said, "Hey, here, you don't call me Dad, you call me Gary." And that kind of just stuck. And he was, there was a lot of people, he intimidated a lot of people, everyone that worked for him was scared of him. He managed and led out of being, intense. And what a beautiful thing to be able to even ask that question, because that shows already that you're breaking that generational change, right? You're not transmitting that onto your children or your future children because it's something that you've acknowledged that, hey, I was afraid of that. So for me, it took a long time. I was terrified of this man for a long time into my late 30s. One key thing is forgiving him, right? So I forgive him for, as we learn in here, they were doing the best that they had from their dysfunctional upbringing, and what was transmitted to them was transmitted to you, and they behaved in a way that what was familiar to them in their upbringing for their own dysfunction. That's why a lot of these things continue on and for a long time. So once I was able to, Todd hit it right on the head. Once I was able to realize it wasn't my fault, he didn't act out that way just because of me. I didn't cause him to act out that way. And then ultimately was able to forgive him, right? And that's part of the recovery in this, is to be able to forgive the people and not be responsible, right? And then I become my own loving parent. And as a result of doing that, then I don't behave like that scared child, that how you were afraid of your father, how I was afraid of mine. Anytime there was a angry person, I defaulted back to that, I'm frightened by angry people. It occurred in my marriages, it occurred in my professional relationships. Anytime there was a situation where I felt like I was out, where the level of anger directed towards me was significant enough, I was terrified of that. And once I learned to reparent myself, forgive them for exactly what it is, it's nothing more than them doing the best of what they had at that time. That's the way I look at it. And quite frankly, how I interact with anyone. They're just giving me all the best that they possibly can right now.
Well, and to have some compassion and empathy
Yes.
for them. I mean, how much pain do they need to be in to yell and scream at your kid?
100%.
You know, they must be in a lot of pain and hurt themselves.
The easy target, or the easy one to lash out onto. So one thing that I've noticed, I notice it within my own family, I notice it within me as well. The one component that is missing from these things continuing on generationally is forgiveness, right? Identifying it, then forgiving, right? So if I can have forgiveness, that means I'm not going to do it. So what a great question to ask. That means that you're coming out of that fear, right?
Yep.
And that's what I hope our listeners get out of this is, hey, some of these things we've recovered from, some better than others, some we're still working on. But yeah, I grew up terrified. I was scared shitless, Todd, of my dad. Terrified. Even into my 20s and 30s, I'm like, there was some, that's a whole different show if we ever get into that. But he did some shit intentionally to literally scare the shit out of me. Like, don't do that again, right? And I'm going to scare you so badly and so aggressively to kind of like prevent me from doing it. And that was his way of trying to parent.
And it's all about control and manipulation.
Yeah.
How do you get your kid to behave and act the way you want them to? You scare the fucking shit out of them, and you yell at them and you scream at them. And when you're lit up on alcohol or drugs, guess what? It's a lot easier to get angry, and it's all manipulation and control, but it doesn't work. That's not a good motivation, you know, especially when you're 4 and 5 years old.
Well, and look what it's done to Sierra. Look what it's done to me. I was frightened by angry people because my defense mechanism was to cower from it, and it carried on into my adult life. I now forgive him for doing the best that he could. And I see exactly that in his grandfather or his father, who was a very violent, abusive man. And so these things get carried on generationally. And I'm glad that I'm not doing things with my children that are going to cause them to be fearful of angry people.
And this is a little off topic, but did you have an emotional release when he passed away?
Okay, there's two parts to that conversation as well. This is the father that during my early young years, right? I have a different situation with a biological father, but the father that raised
the father that raised you.
Correct. Yeah. He's still alive.
Okay.
Yeah, but you know,
your other father passed away, your biological father.
Yeah,
okay.
Correct. So I haven't talked to him in a long time. It's because each of the times where I've gone back to him or revisited him in my adult life, I haven't seen anything that is healthy or wholesome to want to participate in. Right, so that's part of that healthy boundary. Don't wish him any harm, but I've forgiven him for the things that occurred early on in my childhood.
Great, excellent feedback. All right, Sierra, these are pearls. Now we got Soraya for Sierra.
I actually really love that
Nailed it.
I love that you brought up the breaking of generational traumas and generational curses, because I had the pleasure of talking to Sierra beforehand. And something that she did mention is this is something that's gone on in her family for long enough. So her father was an alcoholic, her father's father was an alcoholic, and so on and so forth. And this is just a pattern that keeps continuing. So her reading the laundry list for the first time, she was blown away. She read these traits and realized all of the things that each parent has carried down from each generation and how it's affected her in her day-to-day relationships. And she doesn't want to be like that. So that is a conversation that we had, and she's making that change. So, I mean, for me, I think that, excuse me, I had a brain fart there for a minute, but acknowledging that, yes, it's not your fault is the first and most important step. And the next step is obviously, forgiving that angry authority figure. And I didn't forgive my angry authority figure until years after he had died. My father, he was addicted to meth. He was violent. He was angry. He was paranoid. He was a lot of things. And it took me a really long time to understand that my father, who was addicted to meth, is not the same person as my father, the man who raised me from, 1 to 10. And it took me a long time to separate those behaviors of addiction from the person. And once I was able to do that, I was finally able to forgive my father for everything that he had put me through. So that forgiveness is a huge step in your transitional journey to living a happier, healthier life. And then when it comes to angry people, just other angry people, it's easy to be triggered by that and go back to your inner child where you were abused by your authority figure. And I think the hardest step to take is understanding that what's happening now is not the same circumstances, not the same situation as what happened to you when you were a kid. And it's easier to see the person once you can separate those behaviors from the person. And you can forgive that person and see that they're going through something and they're experiencing something that's outside of your realm of understanding because you're not them.
But if you're being sincere with your little child, your hurt, scared little child, and you're being sincere and you're saying, I love you, I will protect you at all costs, no one's going to hurt you anymore, don't you kind of have to stand up for yourself when angry people start to abuse you now as an adult?
Absolutely. I think that you do have to stand up for yourself, but I think part of that comes with separating people's behaviors from who they are. I think that once you do that, it's easier for you to stand up for yourself because what's preventing you from standing up for yourself is fear of retaliation. So
Well, they call it fight or flight, right?
Yeah.
There's two responses when you get scared and triggered. It's either you fight back, which I call the angry teenager, like, let's go, motherfucker, you want to fight? Mm-hmm. And it's a scared little kid. I tended to go to the scared little kid when I got triggered, but some people go, I know a lot of my friends go to the fight, like they get scared and triggered, like I'm going to fight. So it's the teenager or the scared little kid. And it doesn't matter. They're both sort of the same reaction. That is that you're in fear and you're scared. Mm-hmm. It's just how you, decide to react to that trigger.
Well, and as a kid, you don't have the option of either fight or flight. All you have is freeze. What are you going to do? Like you said, you can't run away from home. You're 5. You can't fight. You're 5.
But when you're 14, a lot of people fight back with their parents.
Yes,
I
like physical.
I definitely did.
Physical fights,
That flight
you
is
want to
still
go?
not an
Let's
option.
go.
Yeah.
And that's why they're both the same thing. You're just reacting to you getting triggered and being scared. Mm-hmm. But as an adult and loving our little kid and loving our teenager, we can make them feel so safe that when someone abuses us today, we can say, I don't like the way you're talking to me. I pray for you. I'm sending you healing, loving energy. But I'm not going to take this abuse because this is abuse.
Yeah.
So I hope you can see where I'm coming from, and I wish you well, and bye-bye.
Yeah.
So you don't sit there and take someone screaming and yelling at you.
Absolutely not.
Or physically abusing you,
And because these people are no longer your authority figures, whoever's, angry at you or yelling at you or abusing you, however it may be, because they're no longer your authority figures, you're not obliged to take anything. And it's easier to stand up for yourself when there is no obligation there for you to take any sort of abuse from anybody.
Yeah. So just know I'm in my inner child. I'm taking abuse. I'm living in the laundry list. Let's stand up for ourselves. Mm-hmm. Adult Todd, adult, Sierra, adult Soraya, let's stand up for ourselves. Let's get that love from ourselves or our higher self, our adult self. And let's stand up for ourselves to this person that's screaming and yelling at us, whether it's a restaurant, a Walmart, airport, someone taking your parking space. It doesn't matter. A boyfriend, whoever is abusing you, you need to stand up for, period. Right?
Absolutely.
We don't take no shit no more. All right. Well, that was a good one, guys. Let's see what the next one is.
All right. This next one is from Bethany.
Bethany.
My question for you guys is, how do I cope with a partner who tends to be an avoidant attachment style person in a relationship? So when he feels overwhelmed with work, family, personal anxiety, he starts to put a wall up and isolates, which makes it difficult to maintain intimacy and connection during times my partner is struggling.
Excellent question, Bethany. Thank you for calling in. I have experience with that. I was that guy.
Me too.
I was that guy. In a lot of my relationships, especially when I was still drinking, I would get stressed and in fear and sort of like, frazzled as an adult. And I would go within and I wouldn't talk. I mean, I would literally come home and just like not talk. And my wife would be like, "What's wrong?" Or my girlfriend would be like, "What's wrong?" I'd be like, "Oh, nothing. I'm dealing with it. It's, it's something at work. It's something with my parents. It's something with my friend." And I literally just didn't want to get into it because that's intimacy. Like when I have to share my deepest, darkest fears and my deepest, darkest, experiences, that is creating an intimate experience with another human being. And I didn't know how to do that. I was taught, don't talk, don't trust, don't feel. If we got that down as a kid, we're doing just fine in the Belfer household. Don't talk, don't trust, don't feel, which means I'm certainly not going to feel these emotions and let you know about them. My partner yelled at me. He threw a phone at me today. He told me he's going to break up with me and kick me out of the business. And I'm scared I'm scared shitless and I have to go drink. "Honey, what's wrong?" "Oh, nothing. Just, some issues at the office, but I'm dealing with them." That is not a relationship with a significant other. Nope. That is being selfish, self-centered, and not knowing how to express my experiences and my feelings. But because I was never good at sharing my experiences and feelings because I didn't know how to identify my feelings. I didn't know how to identify what's sad, what's glad, what's, in the work we do, we have to name our feelings in a lot of these workbooks, and I didn't know how to name them. I'm literally like at a loss, like, okay, somebody yelled at me at work today and told me they're going to fire me and I'm going to go broke. I'm scared shitless. I'm like literally in panic, but I don't know how to communicate those feelings to my partner. So what do? I go drink. I get angry. I kick the dog. I start being passive aggressive to those around me. I start creating more destruction in my wake because I don't know how to feel safe. So I don't even talk about it. I don't love my inner child or my teenager. So I create more destruction by being passive aggressive, drinking, spending money, any of the, what I call whack-a-mole addictions, any of them, doesn't matter which one, sex, anger, go drive my car 150 miles an hour on the road. I mean, I would do all that shit. But today, when my wife, I'm currently married, asks me what's wrong, I can sit there and talk to her and I can cry and I could let her hold me and I could be intimate. And it's a wonderful feeling. It's a wonderful, wonderful feeling. But if you don't have practice at it, you don't know how to do it. I didn't know how to do it till I was probably 35, 38 years old. Through therapy, getting sober, and doing the work. But literally up until 38, I had no idea how to communicate my negative, sad feelings to my partner. I just acted like everything was fine. Don't feel, don't talk, don't trust, period. So Bethany, hang in there. Go to counseling, get vulnerable, do some exercises, find people on social media that know how to help with this. Go to retreats together. There's so many wonderful exercises out there with partners to learn trust, to learn how to express feelings, to learn how to be intimate. But don't stay angry at that partner. Don't let that partner stay angry at you. Everything gets healed with love. It's just knowing how to communicate these feelings and knowing that you're in a safe environment. No one's going to use it against you. It's only going to bring you closer to your partner. True love always wins out over fear and protection and control. So please check back in with us, Bethany, and we love you. And remember always that you got to be nice to my friend today, and that's nice to yourself. You're doing the best you can. Keep using the tools, keep finding other, scenarios and other ways to try to heal yourself and heal your relationship with your partner. And with that, I'll pass it on to Blake.
Yeah, thanks, Todd. I think for me, the reason that I was in my marriage didn't feel like I could be honest or didn't, just would isolate or put a wall up is because I didn't feel safe in being able to tell the truth, right? Like I didn't feel like, I felt like anything I say, or if I was vulnerable or was honest, was just going to be used against me. And it was really hard to, And that was because I was so afraid of her leaving me that I wanted to put up this image that I'm okay, everything's great, like there's no issues, no worries, like everything's fantastic. Like I could have just, found out that I, lost, this or something bad happened in business or whatever, and I'm gonna, pretend like everything's great because I didn't feel safe in being honest and vulnerable. And then also because I was worried what the reaction would be.
Right. What's the worst thing on the laundry list? I'm terrified of abandonment, and we'll do anything to hold on to that relationship, no matter fucking what.
Yeah,
guess what? If I'm sharing that I'm a pussy because I'm scared to death and I'm in fear, the last thing I'm going to do is try to rock the boat with my relationship. Because what if she leaves? Then I'm really fucked.
Yeah, because I'm so scared to be alone, right? So it's like I got to put on this not being true to myself. So I don't know if that helps or hurts or what to your scenario, but maybe gives you some perspective on the other side. Cause I'm the person that's put the wall up, avoid conflict, avoid confrontation, avoid hard conversations. Cause I never felt safe. And that was because of a lot of different reasons, me being codependent and, coming from a family of dysfunction had something to do with it. But it also was, I never felt safe in that relationship because I found the chaos that I got from my mom and my new partner. So my now ex-wife or soon to be ex-wife never made me feel safe. And because I never felt safe, I never felt like I could be honest and vulnerable. Cause when I was honest and vulnerable, it would come back to bite me.
She uses it against you.
Use it against me. Yeah. And then I learned that like 6 months into
not doing that again.
6 months into dating, because she thought I got sober from alcohol and I really got sober from a whole bunch of other things. And then, being told like, go do your drug of choice and die, like after being honest about it is like, is the stuff that like carried on and probably was why like I never could be honest or vulnerable again. And we were, they say doomed from that point forward. And I think I didn't want to be honest. And I put that wall up for a long time because I was so afraid of being alone. And I was like, this is better than being alone. Like being in this emotionally abusive relationship is better than the alternative. At least I thought at the time than being alone. And I'm going to do everything I can. The Titanic's sinking and I have my Scotch tape, my hot glue gun, and I'm going to try to make sure this boat doesn't go underwater, even though it's, it's taken on water from all edges. And no matter what I do,
the illusion of control.
Yeah, exactly. So
good stuff.
Kick that over to Chucky Woof Woof over here.
Charlie Proton, what do you got for us?
All right. So love avoidant at some point, love avoidant at some point, love avoidant at some point. So then I'm thinking back to the individuals I was with at that time while I was behaving like a love avoidant. And I'm trying to think, because of Bethany's question here, is what could have someone done to me at that time to actually try to be vulnerable? Here's the problem. And I'm not saying that this is the case with her partner, but I've heard it in pieces of each of what you guys said, was that the reality of my state wasn't matching what I was portraying to her, right? So it was very hard for me to get intimate and vulnerable because the actual things that were ailing me were so much different than what I had presented or sold to the person, right? I can't get intimate.
Overpromise, underdeliver.
Totally. I can't get intimate about the true status of my work dealings or things that were occurring financially, emotionally, because they are so far from what I had promised or what I had committed. And it goes back to that abandonment, right? So there was a huge wall because the reality of my state was so much different than what I had been putting out there. And there's components of people pleasing in there. There's components of all kinds of dysfunction in that, right? So especially my upbringing was always about presentation. It doesn't matter what you do as long as you look good while doing it. And there was always the portrayal of everything's perfect, right? I know that's a big thing in your family as well too. The image
gotta look good.
So keep in mind, we talked about dating on a previous episode, but the manner for which I was in whatever of these particular relationships where I couldn't be intimate and vulnerable were on false pretenses anyways, right? So not saying that
you were lying from the beginning.
Correct, right? So it's like, you don't want to tell right? So even I know a lot about your first marriage, Todd. It's like you don't want to tell.
Like the first night I met her, I told her I went to Harvard, which I didn't even know where Harvard was at the time. And, told her all this bullshit. So immediately the first night I met her, I started off with a lie. Because I wanted to look good because I was afraid she wouldn't like me if I told her the truth.
Correct. So then last thing you want to tell her is, hey, honey, our entire financial livelihood is at stake right now. You don't want to tell her that.
No.
You don't. Okay, so now back to Bethany. So it's so hard because you can't go to him and say, hey, you can tell me anything. Right? And that doesn't help. You can tell me anything. Like if you try a sincere effort or come on, what's really bothering you? Please tell me what's really bothering you. He's just going to be like, fuck you. No, I'm not telling you. Right. So how do we get that guy turned around? So it's got to start small, right? It's about gaining that trust and making efforts to be of intimacy, because you hit it on the head in the very beginning. This is an intimacy-based deal. Mm-hmm. For whatever reason, there's something blocking him from wanting to be intimate. In my experience, there's something blocking me from wanting to tell the whole fucking truth.
And usually, it's a number of the laundry list.
Completely. He's worried she's going to get mad. Mm-hmm. He's worried that Bethany's going to leave. He's worried
not going to feel safe.
Yep.
They're going to use it against him. Yep. They're going to be passive aggressive with it. I'm going to create more damage. I mean, when you're 6 years old, did you tell your mom or dad, I'm feeling really scared right now. You're yelling at me. You're throwing shit at me. You just put your fingernails in me. You just used the belt on me, and I'm feeling really scared, and I don't know what to do, so please make me feel safe. Of course not. That's the last person that you're going to go to, because guess what? They're causing the trauma.
We didn't even know we had the option to do that.
Right.
It was just
or the person that is causing the trauma is the reason,
And that lives deep inside of you. So we tend to live like that the rest of our lives unless we get help and have awareness.
So getting back to this, Bethany, I truly believe, this is just my opinion, the best thing I would start with saying things like, I love you no matter what.
No matter what.
Right. It's not a prying question. It's not anything. It's just, hey, I just want to remind you, hey, I can tell you've had a bad day. I just want to remind you, I'm here with you right now and I love you no matter what. And maybe repetition of that will say, you know what? Fuck.
And start being vulnerable yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you got to start with it too. Like, hey, maybe do this. Like, I can tell you have a bad day. Let me share with you something that happened with me
last week
that I've never told you.
Yeah.
That I've never told you, right? Because he's not wanting to share things that she doesn't know. That's what the blockage is right here, right? So I would just start with some positive affirmations, right? You're not going to get him. All it's going to do is start fights. I have had so many fights over this shit. And by the way, I learned my lesson too. Okay, I'm going to get intimate with her. And then she looks at me like, what the fuck are you? Wait, this is nothing. Yeah. Really? This is what's really going on? Are you fucking kidding me?
Or you're just doing this for attention. I don't believe you.
Regardless, I would be the lead. And I would remind him that you love him no matter what. No matter what. Say that over and over. And maybe that leads to something.
Unconditional.
I love you no matter what. Whatever it is bothering you, I hope you feel comfortable telling me at some point, I love you no matter what.
And I want to be here.
No prying.
I don't need to solve your problem, but I'm here. You can lean on me. You can hug me. You can use my strength and love until you can heal yourself. Tell me how I can help you.
Yep. Do whatever you can to promote intimacy. That's what's missing here. And then I think finally too, great suggestion here, lead with vulnerability. Let me tell you something I haven't told you before, something that bothered me at one point. Yeah. So anyways. Yeah.
Good stuff. Thanks, Charles.
Charles pretty much said exactly what I was thinking in more words.
He's a very wordy guy.
But yeah, I mean, the biggest thing is just creating a healthy, comfortable environment for him to be comfortable in, to feel safe in. Offer your support when he's ready to come to you for support, but just knowing that you have that, you have your open arms, you have your open heart, open mind. That makes a world of difference when someone feels safe, and then they're not so avoidant. It's literally exactly what Charles said.
What Soraya's saying reminds me, like, I've sponsored a lot of men in ACA, and I can't tell you how many of these men, when I ask, tell me about your childhood, and they say, oh, it was okay. My parents were loving, and it was a good childhood. Everything was great. And then we crack open the step work and we get into it, and it's like they're bawling hysterically. They are just like in tears talking about this stuff because they've never been allowed to open up about what's really going on. Because if someone at work's really bothering me and I'm feeling scared and fearful, it probably has nothing to do with that person at work. It's opened a wound from me from when I was young. When a woman's yelling at me and getting angry at me and criticizing me, it typically is not the trigger from that woman. It's opening up a wound when I was 5 or 6 years old, and it's getting recreated. So, you know, the fact that he feels a little blocked and stuck in talking to you, don't take it on personally. This has nothing to do with you. This is his stuff probably from when he was young, dealing with his parents or siblings or people in his life when he was young that created a lot of serious injury. So I would, recommend going to therapy, getting a really good counselor, doing exercises together, and learning how to open up and trust each other. So, Bethany, thank you so much for calling in. That was a wonderful question. And any last words for our viewers, and so we can go home and put on our tux for the big party tonight?
No, don't we have more of these? I'm excited. I want to keep going.
We were supposed to have another one. But we did have somebody that wants to come on, right?
Yeah, we do have a couple people that wants to come on, but we do want to do more of these.
This is great.
So if you guys want to reach out to my email is going to be thelaundrylistpodcast@gmail.com. I would love to hear from you. I want to hear what questions you guys have to ask. We all want to hear it, and we'd love to answer some of your questions. So email away and we'll get together on a phone call.
And anything goes, anything goes. Ask any question you want. If you want to use a fake name because you don't want to use your real name or you're scared, that's fine. We don't care. We just want to help. We want to help. If you want the Red Book, which is the Bible for the codependency, basically, you can email Soraya at info@thelaundrylistpodcast.com.
No, it's thelaundrylistpodcast@gmail.com.
Thelaundrylistpodcast@gmail.com. Info. You can also text Soraya no, I'm just kidding.
Or you can text Todd at 602-320.
You could have my number all day long. I don't care.
I'll put mine on too.
Okay, this was really cool. I like this. And you know what? I hope that people do ask questions anonymously. I would have loved to have taken advantage to do something. We didn't have podcasts.
Right.
To be able to listen into something regularly and then anonymously put in questions and participate. I hope.
Yeah, when we were, in our 20s, we were like literally reading Dear Abby. If the listeners that are young remember that, like we were reading Dear Abby.
The listeners would be old, not young.
Yeah. Well, actually, when Todd pitched this idea to me, I was like, "Oh, it's like Dear Abby."
Yeah, I couldn't believe she even knew
wow.
that.
That's impressive.
I just
have no
refer to
idea
it
what
as like
that is.
Dr. Fraiser Craine because
so good.
My wife and I watch that show every night before we go to bed, so I'm very familiar with that call-in show and the advice that he gives. So, thank you for listening. We are so grateful for all the people that tune into the Laundry List. We encourage you to, if it's not listening to us, get help, get a therapist, get someone that's familiar with the ACA work. I always ask therapists, do you know about ACA and have you done any of the work? Because for me, this is imperative. If a therapist doesn't know anything about ACA and these childhood traits, I am suspect that they're going to be able to help me. I remember I had a therapist when I was 26 years old, and boy, I was a terror. And every time I came out of that therapy appointment, it was someone else's fault. It was my dad's fault. It was Human's fault. It was Mark's fault. It was someone else's fault. And I felt validated. I felt victorious. I felt relieved that I can blame someone else for my own problems. But 100% of my problems, if I continue them today, it's in the mirror. It's me, nobody else. I can't blame my mom anymore.
Facts.
I can't blame my ex-wife. I can't blame my kids. I can't blame anyone but myself. The experience is the past. It happened. What am I going to do with it today? And how am I going to change my life is up to me, nobody else.
That's right.
So this is a blameless, program that we do. We take an inventory of those that hurt us, but it's a blameless inventory to find the healing and love that we need to surround ourselves with to live a life of harmony, peace, and joy. So please be nice to my friend today, and that is you. And we look forward to seeing you next week on the Laundry List.